On day one, I'll issue an executive order to arrest and deport every illegal immigrant in Missouri.
Republican State Senator Bill Eigel has been making waves and catching criticism on TV lately with his immigration stance, even using a translator and phrases from Speedy Gonzalez in one ad. Eigel lives in Weldon Spring, Missouri. He served in the Air Force before starting a successful skylight business. Voters elected him to the state Senate in 2016, where he's now a member of the controversial Freedom Caucus. We'll get to that in a minute. Now he wants to be governor. I asked him about the rhetoric on immigration we've been seeing from him on the airwaves recently. How does this type of language and racially charged rhetoric, you could say, help unite voters at a time when parties are saying we need to turn the temperature down?
Well, I don't know why it would be racially charged rhetoric to say that we're going to enforce our immigration laws. I mean, we're a country of laws. We need to protect the sovereignty of the state, which is why I've made a commitment that on day one, we're going to begin a statewide deportation of everybody who's in the state of Missouri illegally. We're going to declare an invasion under Article 4 of the Missouri Constitution. That is what's going to give law enforcement that which they lack now, which is the authority to do anything. We're going to be able to activate the Highway Patrol, the National Guard, every sheriff in every county of the state to detain people that are suspected of being here illegally and deport them out of the state.
I think that's the part, though. How do you suspect them of being here illegally and not group in people who are here legally and just happen to not be white?
Well, we first of all, we have officers across the state every single day that go after folks that are suspected of committing a crime. And I'm confident that we have some of the best law enforcement in the nation. So they're going to do that. And I think that having talked to a lot of law enforcement, a lot of individuals around the state, we know where a lot of these folks are showing up at, because quite frankly, if you have 70,000 people, that's not a small number. So I am going to work very hard. We're going to have every law enforcement disposal at the state bent toward this effort, and we're going to get our state back.
Let's talk about another part of your one of your ads where you say that Missourians worship God, not abortion. This is one of the many things you're saying in there. I don't think anybody worships abortion, and many people in Missouri have different religious backgrounds, not just Christianity. How can you assure voters, and by extension all Missourians, that you have their best interests at heart?
Well, because I'm always going to be the one that protects their rights. I think that the proper role of government is to protect your rights, that chief amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I've always been pro-life. I've been very outspoken about how pro-life that I am. I'm the only candidate in this race for governor that voted for the heartbeat bill, which actually led to the prohibition on abortion here in the state of Missouri a couple of years ago. And I'm proud of that fact. When I'm elected as the nominee for governor, before I'm governor, I'm going to unite the Republican Party by bringing us together to push back on the abortionists who are trying to instill abortion into our Constitution in November. So this is a fight we've got to have.
If that constitutional amendment that you're talking about, the initiative petition effort to protect abortion rights, reverse the ban, passes in November, and you're elected governor, how do you reconcile that after you take office?
Well, if I'm the nominee, it's not going to pass. And you got to keep in mind that for the past 20 years, Missouri has been one of the leaders in pro-life states around the country. Every 2 years, Missourians show up to send the biggest supermajorities of pro-life legislators and statewide office holders to Jefferson City that we've seen maybe anywhere in these United States. So if we have the right person as the nominee of our party who's going to unite Republicans to fight back against that, I don't think that we're going to have a problem.
You don't want women to terminate pregnancies. What is your plan for helping families support these children once they're born, potentially, especially low-income families?
Great question. Let's get rid of personal property tax. I mean, personal property tax, we're one of only 21 states that even have personal property tax, and of the 21 states that do, we have the third highest rate of personal property tax on vehicles anywhere in the country. That means that those working and middle income class households that you're talking about are struggling $300 or $400 on December 1st just to be able to keep the car that they need to get to work every single day. So I think that in this case, more government is not the answer. Less government is the answer. We're going to have less government.
I would say a child costs more than $300 or $400 a year, as you know. So are there any other plans to try and help these families if you're saying no abortion?
If we could have every one of those working middle income class families in this room right now, I think that the idea that we could alleviate and get rid of personal property tax would be so overwhelmingly positive and would be the best step forward that they've probably seen from government in a long time. That's a great place to start.
You've been a state senator for 7.5 years. You've been very outspoken member of the Conservative Caucus, now the Freedom Caucus, which had purposely held up bills at times. You once brought the Senate to a standstill for 41 hours. You've been in the middle of infighting with your party. So I guess my question is, if you're governor, How do you plan to get anything done
Yeah.
with burned bridges potentially in the General Assembly?
No, because I'm going to do that one thing that the other two candidates haven't been doing and won't do. I'm going to call on Republicans to do Republican things. I look at the other states we're trying to emulate, states like Texas and Tennessee and Florida. It's not that those states don't have moderate Republicans in their legislatures. What those states have that we don't is a bold conservative governor that's going to call on Republicans in the state capitol to do those big red Republican things and then hold them accountable if they don't. I'm the guy for precisely all the reasons that you've made. You're right. I don't get along with these special interests down in Jefferson City. I don't work for them. I want to work for the 6 million Missourians who live in this state and need us to confront the swamp.
I want to touch on something you said about special interests. It wasn't just that, it was Republican leadership calling you a swamp creature and members of the Freedom Caucus just saying to illustrate a point that it was gumming up the works of government.
Yeah, I think that's right, because whenever they want to do non-Republican things, we bring things to a standstill. And you know, I think the leadership that made those comments is the exact same leadership that failed to get some of the biggest priorities over the finish line at the end: initiative petition reform, some of the tax cuts that I'm proposing. So yeah, we do have a rhino problem down there, but we're going to take care of that when we have a conservative like me in charge.